A very warm welcome to everybody for the Telecom Leadership Forum 2021. We have a very interesting topic that we are discussing today, and very relevant and very experienced experts who are going to throw light and debate this topic. So we are going to talk about digital banking, the way forward. As everybody knows that the last 15 months or so during the pandemic time, one of the greatest beneficiaries, if I can use that word, has been the digital sector, including a lot of services which were banking on digital platforms, and banking and financial services is one of them. We also know the kind of growth that we have seen in this sector, amazing growth, and the fact is that digital is taking banking to a very different new set of people now. For instance, my maid, she uses her son's help to now actually do banking through her mobile phone. So it's completely new set of opportunities which are emerging, and a new set of things that we are seeing as far as digital banking is concerned. And when I say digital banking, I mean e-banking and mobile banking and various banking and other financial services. So to discuss this, we have today with us Mr. Prasanna Lohar. He's the head of digital innovation at the DCB Bank. We also have Monica Jasuja. She's the vice president at Comviva. And we have Mr. S. Anand, co-founder and CEO of PaySprint. Before I throw open the panel for discussion, I would request Mr. Prasanna Lohar to set the tone for the discussion subsequently, and also share with us his views on the digital banking landscape. Mr. Lohar.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Ibrahim, for introducing me, and good morning all the panelists, and thank you organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk about digital banking rise. So I'll just walk through the presentation. I'm sure this presentation is visible, right, Mr. Ibrahim?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
I can see it.
Yeah, I think as you rightly said, the last 10 months was 10 to 12 months was a drastic change in the banking and every other industry. We'll just go through the presentation in next 15-20 minutes and see what has really changed for banking. So this is all about me. I work in a bank, a DCB bank. So I work there as a digital and innovation architecture head. So without wasting much time, what we'll talk about, what is the current situation, and what are those what are those influencing factors which are making digital banking very prominent, and rather I must say that maybe digital banking is becoming now normal or a traditional banking. What is that banks are looking after this pandemic is a different kind of a transformation, different kind of a disruption with the 5 pillars of banking. Say example, people, process, what are different technologies to be taken care, around which regulations, and rather it's all around only around one of the most important pillar, which is a customer, right? So we'll talk a lot about it. So what I have seen, every 20 years something or the other thing comes in our life. Say it could be technology, say it could be different trend, the way what we have seen iOS or Android came in our life, right, in 2007-8, or internet came into our life in 1995, or demonetization, a lot of digitalization happened in 2016 onwards. I think what we have seen ultimately, keep on innovating, keep on collaborating, so that partner with the right technology. Say example, Comviva today we are talking about, right? Partner with the right partner and right technology on time. That's a key for success for any of the organizations. Say, so banks are not also exception for that. That's what I have seen. The current trend, say example, in 1967, with what we have seen, this ATM was being cash machine, right? ATM was being inaugurated, and that could have been a great moment, right, for all of these guys standing around that. But today ATMs are everywhere, right? People are not really concerned about what is in by ATM. They say that that's a tradition and it has to be there for their service. Rather, ATM, I think people look at there has to be service on everywhere, 24/7, wherever they are. Rather, now millennials, they will look at service should be available on the spot. Whenever they are talking to their gadgets, service should be available. That is how we have seen the era of banking since 1967 till now. And I think these are the days, past days, right? So wherever people used to visit bank branches, I think during pandemic, hardly any of those visited, and even human experience has really changed towards bank branches. So say example, my example, I had opened my bank account way back in 2000, and it took around 35 days to open bank account. I was pretty happy, right? So a bank account being opened in a 35 days, and I must have referred that bank to so many of my friends, my relatives. Please visit to this X branch, and they open. And if I say same thing in 2021, they will laugh at me, right? I think this bank is not really collaborating with the right partners or collaborating with the right technology. So that is how our life has really changed, and a customer is becoming more smarter. What we have seen, what was happening on a branches like remittances or mobile payments or any of those branching operations, now that is moving out of the branches, right? Gone were those days where we used to send letters or money orders, but now the era is of around phone pays, Google pays, WhatsApp banking. So that's how life has really changed, right? So these are some logos, right? So like Kodaks or AOLs, I think I must have used AOL or a Kodak or a Nokia's, right? But I think these logos are vanished. And a problem or a challenge with these logos that they were best logos that moment, but what they have seen, they have not adopted right technology or a right partner, and they have not heard voice of customer, how customer is really moving ahead. And look at these logos, you can't imagine these logos will vanish from our life. Right? If I say some of our colleagues who are listening, please stop using WhatsApp for one day, I will provide you 1,000 rupees. So maybe for one day they will say, yeah, okay, I will do that. But WhatsApp is becoming integral part of life. Mobile has become integral part of life. For millennials, Netflix or some of those gadgets are becoming integral part of life. I will not be surprised. Mobile phones will be as an wearable skill will come into our life. And if these logos also will not adopt, I think these logos also will be vanished. Question is for banking also. Banks are also on that curve, right? So they also need to see how their banking has to be moved. So see, during pandemic, we have seen some of the countries launch these pop-up branches. Wherever need of a small branch is needed, so these mobile branches were there. Or one of those countries, we have seen the drones being utilized for providing the cash. Just imagine 95, we must have said we'll order some food from some gadget, and food that guy will come with the food at your home. So in 1990, you must have seen it's a magic, right? How it is possible. Today, Zomato, Swiggy, all of them are doing it. How it happens, over a period of time, we see different generations are there in our life, and every generation has its own demand. So maybe today, traditional customer would like to visit branches. But as these customers will be wiped out in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, and more Gen X and millennial customers will come, banking will change more often, right? And I think some of the banks like in India, ICICI Bank, they are looking at creating digital bank, or there are some startups or fintech companies, so we call as a challenger banks. They are becoming bank for millennials. So that's how banking is changing. And if a bank like DCB will not collaborate some fintech startup, I think they will be also wiped out. So and even these mindsets are also changing for every customer. Gone were those days we used to do job and get retired, but now every day is learning, and every guy is always learning and engaging more, right? Similarly, they want similar kind of experience from the bank. They don't want, okay, I have a mobile banking app, I will go there and do fund transfer, that's all. They need more than that. They need more kind of a PFM. They need more kind of a 24/7 banking. I am up in the morning, I am sleeping in the night, but during that moment, how bank is gonna capture my moments and help me to create more experience around those moments. So, say example, I am traveling every Friday to Pune, and all of a sudden I'm not traveling. So, bank app will ask me why you are not traveling. I think do you have some other plan? That's how they keep on capturing my data and bring back something, some or the other kind of a experience for me. If I want to be a green throughout my life as a financial stability, and if I say I want to save 50,000 rupees, and if I am all of a sudden doing some transaction of 45,000, it will give me nudge. Are you sure that you would like to do transaction of this refrigerator? You have said that you want to save 50,000 by end of this month, and if you will not do this, I think, and if you do these four more things, I think you should be able to do buy refrigerator as well as achieve your targets. So that's how the new paradigm and agility is bringing in our behavior, and same behavior customer is expecting into their experiences from healthcare, banking, and so on. This is traditional thing, right? Internet is everywhere now. More than half of the population of the world is on internet, and maybe internet will become a commodity just like water here onwards, right? So that is why it's very important to have everything on internet or a mobile, or maybe in the future what we will see, future will be connected platforms. As we have seen, geos are coordinating or collaborating with the Googles or some of those Facebooks, or many more collaborations happening on a larger scale, right? And I think then augmented reality, wearable technology, the way we have seen mobile was so costly affair, right? 2000, 2001, and Reliance has come up with a cheaper phone. That's how equation has changed. Similarly, I think we will see that adoption of a wearable, adoption of IoTs like a smart car or a smart home. My home will be like a gadget. The way I have mobile phone, who is doing banking transaction, my home will directly do the transaction. Electric appliances, or ordering some food, or taking care of any of those whoever is living at the home. So that will be smartly triggered by the home appliances or your smart car. That is also, I think some of the banks also now tying up with the car companies initially, so that the payment experience which is needed inside the car, that will be given by some of the UPIs or some of those handlers, right? So that's how is the era which we will see once the 5G will become or arise in India. I think some of the countries are already doing it, right? What we have seen, how digital banking is a processing from a non-digital to the extreme digital, or we had to wipe out the paper-based banking. Say example of DCB we have done during pandemic. We have launched WhatsApp banking, or what we have done, right? Video KYC, right? The customer can't come to branch, or nor our staff can go to the customer's home. So how do I create a model to collect the KYC, right? So video KYC has arisen. Many banks has really adopted that. Or you talk about how do I understand customer more based upon his transaction, to adoption of a big data or analytics, or if a customer is doing transaction at one mobile banking, how do I understand if he's entering a bank branch? Yeah, he was the same customer who was doing transaction of mobile banking, and I think he was also looking for some property. Let me visit him at a branch as a branch manager. I'll say, Mr. Ibrahim, you are visiting bank branch, right? Some of those real estate properties, and I think we got very good rates for you. And based upon your savings, I think I can offer you some kind of fixed deposits also. So that is a wow experience for Ibrahim, right? And moreover, Ibrahim might have come to the branch with some sad face. So my camera captures it and understands Ibrahim really is looking for some help. And while Ibrahim going out of the branch with a happy face, the trigger goes to corporate office. Yeah, as a branch manager, Anand has really done well done, good job. So how do I really incentivize all of these branch managers throughout this month? I think that kind of a more and more automation will come as a form of a extreme digital, which we see on Amazon Go or something like that. So I think life will be more better when we'll adopt right pace of technologies on time. If you will not do it, somebody else will do it, and that guy will move ahead. So that's the advantage, right? So another trend which always helps digital banking to move ahead, the way we communicate. Earlier we used to communicate with a keyboard or mouse, right? That has changed to your touch or swipe. Millennials do call to order pizza, something like that. Alexa, do this. Maybe tomorrow, what we need to understand, right? How I'm looking at mobile banking app. I'm looking at mobile banking app with a happy face, or what is that I'm looking? How much time I'm spending on those apps, right? So gesture or mood-based banking will come in the future. Today we may say why I'm talking like that, right? But that was a era when we have seen internet was just like as a magic box, right? And which has really opened so many possibilities. So that's how customer or any of the organization looks at how do I go to the next level. So that's the next level could be gesture-based banking or some kind of mood-based banking and so on. So I think some of the other external factors also coming in changing our banking, like cryptocurrencies, right? So there is a lot buzz around cryptocurrencies. It has to be allowed in India. So there is a different topic altogether why it should be allowed, not allowed. But I think the backend technology blockchain, that is what being experienced. I think in a pandemic time, I think more than 6 countries and government done experiments around the centralized bank digital currency, which will be quite helpful if you really study it well and come up with the right guideline and right mandate. I think CBDC will remove all those overheads of extra paper-based currency, creating this paper currency, handling it. I think it's a good way to really look at how country can really move. Similarly, I think at RBI also recently, the way I have done a presentation to NIBM and other guys. So that is this also mentioned in the RBI's vision statement. We need to go for CBDC provided we have right study, right mandate, right guidelines. So I think that's another way to look at banking. Now these big guys, right, Google, Amazons, or now they are coming up with their own banking, right? It may not be actual bank, they might not have actual banking license, but most of the guys, most of the citizens are now banking on a Google Pay, or maybe in some other countries, maybe on Apple, right? Or maybe some other country, Amazons are capturing most of our life, our needs, right? Day-to-day needs, or ordering grocery, or any of those SMEs are also going for Amazon-based ecosystem. Moreover, Geos are tying up with either with Google or Amazon. So this is how important time to really decide or to bring some kind of a regulation, at least in India. How do we regulate this aggregator banking, right? How do we really have a banks should be safeguarded, right? And banks will be always safeguarded, but we also should welcome what is that these Googles are bringing on, right? As a right set of innovations. Not only Google, but various kind of other banks like challenger banks which are coming in India or outside of India, which are setting a tone or giving some kind of a discipline to banks. Please change now. Or even if you are not changing, bring on some more change within your banking. So bring some kind of a digital banking or everyday banking. I think in India we have seen DBS Bank or Paytms, or maybe there are 7-8 new players like Open Bank, InstaMoney. They are trying to become some kind of open banking model for a specific set of customers, specific set of millennials, or specific set of SMEs, like Open Bank is doing. So that is also a good gesture. The way banking is really changing. Another aspect, banking will change your sharing economy, right? The way Spotify or Alibaba, they are taken care of putting economy. I think tomorrow's banking will be marketplace banking. So you might have a banking license, but you will have to open up your APIs for that marketplace where customer will come and choose whether I will go for a bank A or bank B. That is what we have seen Bank Bazaar or a Paisa Bazaar or those lines. But I think that model will be everywhere now, right? So that's another way to look at banking. What we have seen banking, like moving from gold, paper, electronic currency, and so on. So I think so banking can become a crypto banking provided you have different things. I think there are a lot of innovations happening in banking with how augmented reality will come into picture apart from your keyboard or mouses, or how API banking will be prominently become a backbone of current tomorrow digital banking. Or you talk about banking will be out of your branches, and digital banking tomorrow will be AI enabled banking, where customers will receive intelligent nudges, so that it will be like a digital banking has given opportunity to omni-channel banking, but AI will be everywhere, right? So like with a combination of a blockchain, banking doesn't remain between branch and bank, but banking for a customer will be around your telecoms, around your IoT devices, around your other payment service provided, all of them are on same chain. So there are a lot of possibilities where bank branch will be evolved, right? And more partners will offer same kind of a services which we were going for bank branches. So these are all things, Alexa or Harmonites or smart branches or branches will continue to change. We may not require so much of real estate, right? So we have seen now branches are changing. So they are becoming more and more advisory model, right? Or they might operate as a restaurant in the evening, because the real estate can be utilized in a different way, right? Drone banking or this mobile ATM banking or pop-up branches or augmented reality will become a normal banking. I think banking will be everywhere, right? It will not be bank, it will be like a everyday banking. Bank is in backend, and all these startups, fintechs will take care of my food or electronic devices, fuel or auto buy. So that's how banking will be as a value as an aggregator. I think so these are all initial thoughts where collaboration is right with the right partner and fintech is required. I'll just take one more minute to understand how transformation happens from one organization to another. Every bank has its own journey. Say Paytm is a new journey, or DCB Bank is an 90-year-old journey. Cooperative banks has a different journey altogether, right? In the mid of so many mandates to do. SBI Bank has evolved a different bank, right? In the last 4 years with the cloud or 24/7 models and IndusInd, ICICI. Every bank has its own journey, and as that journey, they want to go for the next level. How do I go to the next level? And these pillars help us to go to the next level. Right set of people, right set of skill set, right set of processes to be automated. I can automate everything, but how to and how much I can automate as a bank, right? As a DCB bank, I can automate only 30 processes a year, because that is how my bandwidth. But any new bank which is coming, I'll say I'm automated from day one, right? Or adoption of technology, like say AI, big data, blockchain, or what is that I am doing with the right set of regulation. I might be doing some aligned with cryptocurrency, but it may not be part of a regulator's agenda, right? So doing innovation, creating digital banking, but it has to be supported or guided by, I think recently RBI has given a very stringent and a good guideline for a security. And if I start implementing as a bank now, it will take at least few months together. So, but we have to do digital banking in a view how regulators are watching it. Most important two things, you are doing it for customer. Ask customers, visit customers, engage customers, take their feedback from various channels, from branch, mobile, and see how banking is important for them. And finally, right partner, right fintech or any other technology partner. So Monica and Ibrahim and Anand, thank you so much for hearing me. So these are my initial remarks. So maybe over to Ibrahim, and I'll just stop my share. And I think I had to make somebody host, right? So that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for a very, very comprehensive and highly informative presentation on what's happening in digital banking. Thank you so much. And it has given us a very good background of what is it that we want to discuss. Now, Telecom Leadership Forum is primarily about telecom. So my first question to all the panelists here is that so far, what has been your experience with the telecom providers in India? You see, the way I look at it and the way I gather from the presentation that Prasanna just gave was that there are basically three big stakeholders in this. One are the traditional banks, which are there, which are now trying and gearing up to become digital. The other is the digital and mobile banks and various financial service providers. And the third is the telecom operators, which provide you the pipes and the bandwidth and the experience to really be able to offer these services. So we have on this panel both technology vendors as well as solution providers as well as banks themselves. So my first question to you is that what is your experience with the telecom operators so far in terms of creating the right infrastructure for you to be able to offer the kind of services and the kind of customer experience that you want to offer to your customers? So maybe we could start with Mr. Prasanna himself, or Anand, whoever.
Fine, I can go, no problem.
Yeah.
I think Ibrahim rightly said, I think telecom obviously has played a big role. And the way I look at especially digital banking and telecom, I think the three things I strongly believe has changed the way banking, especially digital banking. I think, and that's JAM, which is one is Jan Dhan account, second is Aadhaar, and the third, which I call mobile or smartphones, right? And I think these are three pillars which really is changing the way the entire digital banking is taking place, right? And obviously with the 4G coming in makes the foundation of banking, and then the smartphone penetration today, I mean, you may say about close to about 500 million smartphones in India. Probably next 2 years we'll be close to about 800 900 million smartphones, so which really means that the entire landscape is changing in terms of the way business is happening. And I think that's predominantly is the foundation by how digital banking is shaping up right now. And I think without mobile, without telecom networks, without 4G and probably 5G coming up, I really don't think we can even think about digital banking the way it is being thought about today. And I think what Prasanna also mentioned about in his presentation, a lot of things, I think everything is connected devices, and I think and telecom becomes the core of it. And thanks to one of the very most economical data cost of data speeds in India, data cost, I think is really ensured that we have a widespread adoption. And I think that's really going to change even how banking is happening in India.
So, Monica, would you like to add to whatever has been said so far? What has been your experience with the telcos in terms of creating the right infrastructure for the banking service sector to grow?
So, in addition to what Anand and Prasanna have already said, I think a couple of things stand out. Telcos have been at the forefront of actually creating both acceptance as well as the availability of cheap mobile internet. And if that pillar was not there, I don't think we would have seen the rapid rise and adoption of mobile banking. And telcos are also primarily responsible for being able to disseminate information about banking and financial services almost as the first port of call for anyone who has access to a mobile, now has access to financial services. That wouldn't have happened before. And banks have traditionally been, and we've seen a lot of pictures in Prasanna's presentation earlier, where banks used to be branches where people had to visit. Suddenly the bank is now on your mobile phone. And also banks have been adopting very rapidly with what telcos have been providing, which is cheap, fast internet. Therefore, there are many ecosystem partners that are coming together to actually create the digital banking revolution, which is based on many pillars apart from just telcos. Telcos provide the pipes, telcos provide the connectivity, and telcos provide the availability and bandwidth, of course, apart from their agent network, to be able to provide fast internet and also access in far-flung areas. But I think then what happens is OEMs who actually reduce the cost of a mobile phone, therefore it becomes accessible, and providers such as us working with banks in order to provide the best, fastest experience and for consumer banking, which makes consumer banking more understandable, accessible, and easy to use. So I think it's a combined partnership. I know we're talking about telcos, but telcos won't have to work in unison with others. And the last but the most important policy lever that we haven't touched, I think Anand touched briefly on this, was the government. The government works very actively to actually promote policies that are going to make sure that banks understand that they are not at fault when, say, for example, frauds happen. Like the liability shifts that are associated with bad phishing attacks, skimming attacks that happen, consumer education, all can't fall on a bank. Suddenly now the entire ecosystem is working together in order to educate people how banking works. What is the advantage of using digital banking? How do you use mobile banking? How do you not fall for frauds? Now, all of that is a cohesion of a multitude of factors and people coming together across the industries, obviously led by telcos.
Thanks a lot, Monica. If I come back to you, Prasanna, and ask you in brief to tell us what are the areas where you think the telcos really need to change, improve, pull up their socks?
I think a very good question. I think sitting outside of the telco, we can always comment, right, how it should be operated. I think being fond of blockchain technology or wearable technologies, I think there are a lot of improvements considering how payment can happen from customers and there are. I think recently we have gone live with DLT for telcos, right? A digital ledger technology, which will reduce a lot of these frauds, which just happens through SMSs at least. So SMSs will be sent by authentic service providers, at least bulk SMS and corporate leaders. I think that's a good move telcos has really done, and other industries should look at how telcos has collaborated together and done it, right? Apart from that, how industry will move on to the OTT, right? Media and entertainment industry where telcos plays major role. So there also we can implement similar kind of use cases where payouts of content contributors can be done possibly with the help of blockchain kind of technologies. I think telcos had opportunity to get into banking, say example during USSD, right? USSD was a very good model for those on feature phones. But I think maybe because banks and telcos collaboration, non-collaboration, I think that very good model has wiped out. So they could have done minimal cost for those because it was based upon SMS technology, that whole model USSD. So if they could have done, or maybe bank and telecom can collaborate together, I think those remaining features phones will also come on a very good screen or a very good experience for those customers. While we always say smartphone or a smart banking is a future where UPI or many of those backend technologies does work. But I think if telcos really can decide tomorrow, they can become one of the front for this backend banking. So that could be the one way to look at how USSD could have been one of those feature phones or old phones, right? There are many models where telcos can really implement. I think collaboration is one thing which has started. Exportability, right? So tomorrow, with eSIM, that portability will become easy portability, right? So today I can choose banking with the DCB bank. I can shift my money just like that, right? But in telecoms, I cannot switch my services from one provider to another provider just like that. It's a manual process. You have to visit some branch and fill up the form. I think some digitization is happening certainly out there. But sitting at home, can I not change my service provider? And more interoperability between service provider should come. I think this SMS DLT is one of the examples. I think certainly we'll see many more use cases will come in upcoming phases. And what we have seen, these Jios or Nokias are experimenting around 5G. I think that will also be one of the game changer, right? More or the sooner or the later, that should come in our life. I have seen in one of those India Mobile Congress, smart homes created by Nokia's or complete AR, VR or connected cars. So that's the future, right? I think that should come more early as far as a country like India is concerned. We've been hearing 5G and a lot of challenges around 5G. But I think 5G is a must provided how life is really changing on a data or internet. I think that's one of the things we should look at. Yeah.
Anand, Monica, anything that you would like to add on how can collaboration, what more do you expect you want from the telecom sector for better, more productive collaboration between the BFSI sector and the telecom operators?
I think, Ram, I think Prasanna summed it up. I think today also, I think one thing that, at least in the telecom we used to talk about a few years back is the kind of connectivity, especially in the rural part of India, right? And what we've seen today, especially, I mean, the COVID really showed it us that the rural connectivity in India has become far more better today, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, when we used to talk about financial inclusion, and the one thing used to be an impediment to say that we don't have data speeds, we don't have, connectivity in rural areas. What do we do? And the entire the financial inclusion is to be a non-starter because we didn't have the connectivity. And today we are seeing a different perspective of what telecoms have done. I think telecoms, have started focusing much bigger on the rural perspective, on the rural areas, and investing in a rural setup, giving 4G connectivity. And that not only has led to better connectivity, and I think a whole lot of services, and especially banking, I think is the most, really got impacted because of that. So I think it's been a good one by telecom, and I think it's really helped to really reach digital banking to the last mile, that what we call as in India.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Monica, you would like to add anything to whatever has been said
Ibrahim,
so far?
I actually have a slightly different point of view and wanted to almost dovetail into what Prasanna said. But I think we're talking a lot about the future. But something that telcos have done very well that also needs recognition is mobile money services. So as you know, Comviva is a leader in mobile money and financial inclusion. Now, what has happened is the telcos had the reach, and obviously there were users in far-flung places who did not have access to any formal financial services. So what telcos did was marry the need with the availability and across their agent network, and actually make a system happen where the first port of call and entry for millions of people around the globe is actually a mobile phone and cheap internet, and now the availability of making money, like literally P2P payments happening on a non-smartphone phone. Now I think what telcos had, there was an opportunity to actually make mobile money a little bit more pervasive, including in India. In India, however, the regulatory and the banking models have evolved slightly differently, with the payment banks now coming in and also offering a similar opportunity. But if you look at what is the trend across the globe, if you look at telcos, they are the mainstream providers and therefore the mainstay of how financial inclusion the bedrock of financial inclusion is based on telcos. And that cannot be taken away from them, because their reach and their availability and their importance in the lives of people cannot be overstated. And therefore actually the governments in many of countries are actually working actively with telcos to try and connect them with each other. So for example, if I have a Vodafone and somebody else has an Airtel, I should be able to send money from a Vodafone to an Airtel, and it should be interoperable. So the principles of interoperability, openness, interconnection is all being established thanks to the government and regulatory measures being kicked in. But I don't think that telcos have lost the game. I actually feel that telcos, along with a dash of obviously consumer-based consumer centricity and the availability and working with mainstream banks, or perhaps even mobile money services, which become a little bit more than just mobile agent networks, are going to be the mainstream of the future. And that's where when Prasanna says, a lot of adoption of connected devices, etc., needs to happen, it's already started happening, and we are already doing that with many of our providers as well.
Yeah, thanks. I think again,
I just give my one experience, right? Monica has really said. I was traveling from Mumbai to Shirdi. It's a very pilgrimage place. And while coming back, I saw one board, Bhandaradara, which is a tourist place. And when being a traveler, I thought, chalo, let me go there. And the time was somewhere around 5:30 in the evening. And it was saying 35 kilometers away from that junction. So I saw there was around 65 kilometer diesel in my car. So, and I reached that location. The people said, after 35 kilometers, people said, this is not a Bhandaradara. This is just a small village. Actual tourist place is somewhere 10 kilometers away. You have to travel down there. And by the time I reached there, because it was hilly road, right? So I'm saying that village roads. And it took around, it was around 7 o'clock. And that time was evening was going very early. Then I inquired, how do I reach to that place to people, and how do I find my hotel to stay there, or where will I go, right? So I think some people, I opened my app and it was not connecting at all. So just 35 kilometers away from the main highway road, in 2016, it was not connecting at all. I couldn't book it from Make My Trip. I had to talk to 7-8 guys, is there in nearby hotel? That's how I got the hotel. Now another question, how do I get a diesel out there, right? So people said there is no diesel pump in a trajectory of 50 to 70 kilometers. So there is a small shop in one village. You can go and please inquire, but it is evening. I'm not sure whether you will get it or not. So I went in the shop. There was one old lady, and somehow I got 4 liters of diesel, and I was so happy. I asked, do you accept some kind of a card or something to that? She was like clueless. What is in my card? What is in my POS? This and that. And somehow she said there is one ATM. Please check. Then another question, right? Whether that ATM will work. or not work, right? Whether that connectivity is there or not. But fortunately, I went there, I got some new notes, and I gave her cash to the old lady, and I moved to the nearest hotel, which I searched it with the help of a people. So I visited same place in 2018. Okay, and my mobile network was working properly in that area. And moreover, I went to the same old lady shop and I asked, "Do you accept now some card or a POS?" She was having that QR code present in her shop. So just imagine after 2016 end, when I had visited there, and within a 2 years that infrastructure was available in 2018. So I was so happy that moment. This is how life is changing. So Monica, I just support what you have said. Telecoms and connectivity is really improving, as Anand said, in villages. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, and that's how life is changing because of technology. A lot is being said about 5G. So is 5G going to be something that even the banking and financial services sector going to benefit greatly from? Or do you think that 5G is a little too early? There's a lot of hype on 5G.
I think 5G
so
will become...
is banking sector's future dependent on 5G?
Absolutely. So as I said during my presentation, how consumer behavior change. Say example, banking behavior change based upon how telecoms have provided the internet and mobile phones has become cheaper, and all of a sudden banking is happening mobile banking. I think hardly any bank has any mobile banking app in 2003-4, right? So now every bank is a necessity channel to have and similarly as a 5G will come into picture, more of those variables, IoTs will become, latency will be reduced, right? But at the same time, being a bank, we need to take care of security, how IoT devices will be more secure on a 5G.
Yeah, we will discuss security. Yeah. Anand, Monica, you have any views on 5G?
I think 5G, I'm sure like that 4G has changed the way banking is done. I think 5G is definitely going to change the way banking is going to be done, right? And I'm sure you'll have new use cases will come up. You'll change the way banking is being done. And I think that's going to be a good news. I think 5G I'm sure is keenly awaited by banks and fintechs. And I think security, as I mentioned, Prasanna, I think sure that's something that we need to really look at, how we really take care of privacy and security. But apart from that, I think it's being highly awaited to see how it's going to really impact digital banking.
Monica, you have anything to say to?
Nothing more to add apart from the fact that we are still waiting for 5G and what it's going to mean. But from our perspective, as far as digital and banking is concerned, any move that is going to help speed up and therefore provide better access is always welcome. So we're obviously eagerly looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll come to my next question, and that is about the growing ecosystem. I think we heard about the e-banking, mobile banking, digital banking apps, which are now becoming more and more active and prominent. They are playing an interesting and a big role, increasing role in the BFSI sector. We obviously have the traditional banks, which are also trying to become more digital. And somebody talked about the challenger banks, the new banks which are coming up, etc. So, are these going to? So how does the traditional banking sector look at these new players? Does it look at them as threats, or does it look at them as opportunities? What is happening? What is coming out of the change in the profile of the BFSI sector?
So I think banks are also changing. So challenger bank or a open bank or a neo bank has the same terminologies for same kind of entities. I think it is coming from Europe or US, right? And where there is a proper structure for challenger banks or a proper licensing structure by the regulator. In India, I think we yet to come up with a proper regulation for challenge and the open banking. And in no sooner it will come also. So there are some 7-8 entities or where they claim them as a challenger bank in India. But I think banking will remain forever. And even if they want to sustain, there will be the right set of a collaboration between bank and the challenger bank or the fintech companies who are into one of those services. Say example, let's say example Grow, which is one of those top fintech company for wealth and insurance and those things. Now they are collaborating with a few banks, right? So that this bank can acquire more customers through that channel. So these challenger or fintechs are becoming one of the channel, just like a branch or just like mobile banking. All of a sudden, bank like DCB collaborating with one partner like Paisa who is sitting on lakhs of customers. Automatically, these customers will be routed for some of the services. Say, example, fixed deposit is one of our prominent service, or something to do with the SMEs. Let me collaborate with the SME some platforms. Open, say example, Open Bank. So that's how equation will be there in India, because RBI is quite smart enough and they know how to convert P2Ps into NBFCs, right, which they have done earlier. Similarly, right, said, and beneficial regulation will come to support these challenger banks and open banking kind of things. See, one of the things which is account aggregator, which is a model which is being practiced by Rebit, which is RBI's arm, where some information unit providers like FIUs will share this information, say example, larger banks or GSTN, wherever the information of a customer is available. And this information will be fed to the information utilizers, say banks, fintechs, again, right, through account aggregator. That model is coming up and that will standardize everything. So today's open bank who are collaborating with the multiple banks as a point-to-point interfacing, right? So they get APIs from one bank A, bank B. That's how their model works. But tomorrow through account aggregator, it will become a standardization of data sharing as well as an API sharing. So that's how is the future of challenger banking, at least in India. But challenger banks, or rather fintechs, are very, very important so that banking goes out of banks and goes to the actual people. What we have seen 2011 financial inclusion, what we have done as a PSU banks, we have asked some of those business correspondents or some of those agencies to run a BC model into the villages, so that more and more customers become banking savvy, or they through RuPay in 2014 we have almost given this RuPay card to everybody. That is what everybody claims, but actual utilization is quite low. Okay, and there are quite a lot of business model which are required in villages, which now as internet is reaching out there, mobile is already reached, and I think that's how we can see. But I think I know some of the fintech companies who are only for rural or agriculture. So in a nutshell, Ibrahim, what I want to say that challenger banks will remain along with the banks. It will not be like they are acting differently. At least in India, if any of the fintech is saying that I am a challenger bank, independent bank, without any regulation, it will be for some time, and eventually they will be benefited by proper regulation, at least as a India per se. But outside of India, many challenger banks are collaborating with the independently as well as with another bank. So I think once again, collaboration is a game for any of the challenger banks or fintechs for sitting on number of customers.
Yeah, Anand or Monica, you would like to add anything, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what Prasanna said, I think if you look at decade ago, we started with internet banking. Today, we are into API-led banking, right? And and I think it's good to hear, that there's a lot of collaboration that happens with, let's say, with banks and fintechs, with neobanking and all that. And I think the fact remains very clear today that the bank remains the custodian of the customer, right? I don't think there is any debate there. Bank is a custodian of the customer. Bank is a custodian of all the product and services. What do fintechs, neobanking, all of them are trying to do is to create larger adoption, get better interface, right? I mean, that's predominantly what they're trying to get better customer, right? They're trying to innovate on the products which banking offers and create a larger adoption of the various banking services. I think that's predominantly. I think the roles are very, 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 it's very well clearly defined. And I think a few years back, banks would look at fintechs would want to keep them at arm's distance because would want to really look at what they're trying to do, because there's a lot of concerns on privacy and security. But I think today, if you really look at it, there's a lot of collaboration that's happening across. Banks have realized that if you need to expand, if you reach to the last mile, they need fintechs to support them, work along with them. Right, and I think that's a big change that's happening, and I think API-led banking is, I think, it's a big game today, and I think a lot of banks today in India have taken it up big time. So I think that's a big change that's happening across in banking.
Monica?
I think we need to draw attention to why challenger banks even exist. So challenger banks, neo banks, open banks, whatever you might call them, are essentially nothing but a technology innovation and therefore a step up in terms of what traditional banks offer. And I think the whole paradigm of banks being able to cater to every single need of a customer is also being challenged. And that is why fintechs exist, because fintechs typically are faster, more nimble, and they're able to solve one particular problem or many such problems very quickly and much better than banks or any other larger monolithic organization ever could. Now, if fintechs are getting into the space, it also shows that there is an inherent need which continues to be unmet, and therefore there needs to be an ability to be able to derive both business value and revenue out of that. So if you look at that particular paradigm, then you know why challenger banks exist. But the question really is, in India, with the RBI having a very hard stance in terms of banking, given all that's happening in the banking landscape, we have to be very clear that neobanks are nothing but a great user experience solving for a particular problem, and therefore riding on banking licenses that are held by others. So it's almost like walking arm in arms with banks. Banks and neo banks or challenger banks are not going to be at loggerheads with each other, which is a very different model than say in the US and in Europe, where many challenger banks have actually taken on banks head on and got a lot of customers, and then they've also, some of them have had huge success and others have not. But the bigger and the most important thing in this entire phenomena remains, which is how do you deal and how do you handle customers? What is the need that you're trying to solve? And banks can do a great deal of micro personalization, which is because they have so much data. Banks typically operate on four models. They have obviously deposits, they have lending, they have payments, and then they have retail arms which actually do business payments. But the question is, can your bank actually offer you an experience that makes you as a customer really stick to your bank, apart from of course trusting your bank with your money? And if that starts happening, I don't think a consumer would move anywhere else. And same goes for the new banks. If you ask a new bank, what are you solving for? It cannot be I'm solving for better user experience, because big tech like the Googles and the Apples of the world can do that much better, and they've been doing that for many decades now. So the question a neobank has to answer is, what can I offer to a particular segment? Maybe it's a niche segment like SMBs, which Razorpay is doing. Maybe it's a niche segment like LGBTQs, which who don't have a voice in our society currently. Maybe it's another kind of service that is being offered. So if that is the case, then it is macro personalization that is being offered, and therefore it appeals to a slightly smaller audience, but it solves an actual need, an unmet need of that particular audience. So I think we have to look at this from the product centric perspective of what are you trying to solve and who are you trying to solve it for. Because otherwise, looking at this problem as just simply faster players taking on banks is not going to help us. And second thing is, I actually feel that neo banks is actually going to help banks become better, because suddenly banks have realized that API first is the way to go. Suddenly they want to open up their entire infrastructures via APIs for others to collaborate with. Suddenly they want to have a partner ecosystem which is much larger. Therefore, I want to work with a fintech and fintechs want to work with a bank only because it makes it better. The entire system suddenly has started unbundling. So unbundling in financial services was a big theme back about a year and a half back. And the reason it all happened is because banks realized that there is value in being able to work with other people instead of building it all by themselves. So I actually think that this is an entire phenomena which is actually helping us move in the right direction. Instead of actually working against each other, we are working with each other.
Thanks a lot, Monica. So one of the things that you said was about the customer, and it used to be said that who owns the customer is very, very important. Now, in this landscape where there are the banks, there are the telcos, there are the various fintech applications and fintech service providers, and let's not forget the FANG, the Facebook and the Amazon and Netflix and Apple and Google and all these guys. So who do you think is likely to have the biggest chunk of customers? All of them will be offering their services to them, but finally, who's likely to be owning the biggest chunk of customers between all these 3-4 stakeholders?
I can go first.
Yeah, please.
I actually feel that consumer logins or consumer accounts will always be in the billions and millions, which are going to be owned by big tech, because obviously there are services which go much beyond banking and services that they own. But in terms of banking, financial services, etc., it's going to be the banks which will continue to have the majority share, and therefore the ownership of a customer, the data, etc., is owned by a bank, because the bank necessarily also takes the liability for it. A big tech can offer partner with a bank, but ultimately what they offer is always services on top of them. We can always challenge whether that's the right model or wrong model, how much of the data sharing is happening for customer information to be made available to any other tech provider in the ecosystem. But one must understand that consumers ultimately are signing legal agreements and terms and conditions with a bank. Therefore, if we don't sign terms and conditions with others, the terms and conditions on top of that is only for data sharing at the most. So when the liability of a financial transaction has to be taken by a financial institution, then ultimately the ownership of that customer also lies with that financial institution. And I don't think we can question that. However, I'm more happy knowing that the government is actually thinking about it, both in India as well as in other countries, where we are actually talking about the ability for each one of us to have ownership of our data, and therefore relent and agree to signing off our data with whichever provider we want. However, I still feel we are far away from the maturity curve. We will have to understand what this means, and as consumers ourselves, we've seen the kind of scams that happen, and each one of us who actually has mobile phones is probably a smart user, is doing that. So I think we're far away from that, but my answer still remains that anybody who is going to take the hit for things going wrong should therefore always be responsible for customer data, customer security, and anything else that comes with it, including revenue, for example.
Thanks, Monica. Prasanna, Anand, you have to add anything?
I think I totally agree with Monica, what Monica is saying. And I think the custodian of the customer actually is the bank, right? Especially the financial perspective, right? And I think today, if you really look at the various partners, I think the bank is probably the most respected in terms of who owns the data today, right? And I wouldn't be surprised that as you go across and we have, FANG, we have all of these companies together, we've got fintechs, all of these guys together, bank starts becoming even the custodian of the data, right? So, and I think that's how things will move on. And I think if you really need to believe that banks will be one place, banks today have, keep your money safe. Tomorrow, I think banks will also be positioned as somebody who will keep your data safe, right? And they will become the custodian of the entire data what the customer has. And I think that's what banks will move on to. And that's what I think ultimately I strongly believe banks will be the custodian of the customer data.
Yeah, I think same view. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question therefore is that for the BFSI is the significance of the telecom sector, telecom connectivity, etc. Is that going to go down over time? They will be just plain pipe and bandwidth providers, that's it?
So I think if you ask me, I think banking cannot be without telecoms, right? So banking cannot be without network. So say example, branch network, right? Branch network does work. Somebody coming into branch and logging into core banking system, it does require network from branch-based that client to the core banking.
So over a period of time, so this is basically connectivity and networking. So which is becoming more of a plumbing kind of a pipe providing plumbing kind of a business, low value. So will the telcos be low value partners in this entire space?
No, they have created no value because of their value. That's what I will say. Right, so we can't imagine. Just imagine, few days back there was some downtime of some of the cloud data center. Right, internet was not available, Gmail service was not available, or just imagine few days back there was some downtime at NSE or something, and so because of some network failure. I think we can't imagine life without networks. We can't imagine life without telecoms. Say example, it's like a breathing space for breathing oxygen for banking in India or everywhere. That's what I can say, Ibrahim. And that stories will continue, and more we will rely on telecoms as we will have a more data. See, branch model was there where you can go, and that is how the ledger banking was there way back before 2000. But I think as we have on a interoperable core banking, interoperable ATMs, interoperable UPI kind of smartphone banking solutions, I think it will be more and more on data and more on networks. And as wearables, IoTs, whatnot, right? Augmented reality become normal things. I think we can't say that they are not, they are just plumbing. They are there. That is why we are at a front runner, providing those much more needed services to the or customer experience to the customers. So it's a win-win game for everybody.
Just to add to what Prasanna is saying, I mean, if you look a few years back, you had separate POS devices, you had separate biometric devices, you have got separate devices which we typically use, right? Even to do, let's say, financial any transaction today, right? Now, what has really happened is with the networks becoming better, with data speed becoming better, all of these are all converging into the mobile, right? You today, most of the banking transactions only through mobile. You really don't use any, you don't have a biometric in it. You have a POS, your phones convert into a POS machines, right? So everything is there in the phone. And that thanks to because of better data speeds, better connectivity, you're able to do that, right? And what really happens is because of that, telecoms obviously get better share of revenues because obviously you're getting more data getting utilized in some of these places. So I think telecom we will always remain the core for whatever banking they fit, right? And it will only increase as times to come.
So one very last quick question, and we are absolutely out of time, is that all three of you, who according to you are some of the role models as far as really leveraging telecom and the fintech space is concerned, in terms of collaboration, in terms of leveraging? So which are some of the very good, either the banks or the telcos who do you think have done a very, very good job and they are really role models?
Ibrahim, if you ask me this question, so if you say which is the best fintech company, whether it is a Paytm or a Flipkart, or which is the best telecom company, Geos or any of those, right? Or which is the bank, right? Is it SBI Bank or DCB Bank and so on? I must say these days, government of India is one of the biggest startups. So the way they are providing these policies and regulations, which is really helpful for banks to work for customers, or telecoms to come up with this kind of tries, come up with the DLT systems, and much more innovations will happen. And the way METI and NITI Aayog are driving that across different sectors, it is really helping India to become a fintech country. We might be number one or number two in the number of fintechs, but I think the way unicorns are coming in, and I think that gives a boost for bringing much more needed innovations for country. And the country and various state governments also really helping these fintechs to become valued innovations rather than valuation based innovations. So I think I will go with the government of India, the way they have done job last 5 to 6 years. No political views, but the way they have really supported, I think that is really a game changer, which we never saw in the past. It may be a good combination. Technologies came right now, and few more things coming right now, but I think it's really helping that way.
Monica, Anand.
Ibrahim ji, I'll go with telco operators who've been doing a stellar job in Africa, in MEA, and also in Europe. Also in India, but in India, the regulations are slightly different. Prasanna has already spoken about the government of India being a huge disruptor, but we can't say that for all governments. I feel telcos have a major play in everybody's lives, including the financial lives of consumers. And telcos, if they were to work in unison with the government, I think there is a lot more value that still remains unprovided for as far as consumers are concerned, including businesses, including hyper-personalization offers, merchant loyalty programs, the ability to be able to drive gamification and actually be able to do that on top of a telco based infrastructure that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I think telcos, just calling them dumb pipes seems to be a little harsh, I feel. But then the reason that is happening is also because telcos have pushed themselves in a corner in terms of innovation. Having all this huge multitude of data and doing nothing with it, and even the personalized offers that they sent us seem to be almost out of place. So it questions, and therefore when we are at the forefront of innovation and we're talking fintech, then everybody thinks that they're not doing their job. But I still feel that they need a whiff of fresh air, think about what they have, which is huge number of users, huge amount of data, and absolute loyalty and trust. And if they were to just use that, they are at the forefront of being able to change anything and everything that we do, including connected homes, including connected devices, and a connected world, which they are able to deliver to us, which no other network can. Either it's a financial services network or any others. So we really should be riding on top of what value they offer and actually build on that.
Excellent points, I think, and I think that's a different discussion altogether in terms of how can actually telecoms do whatever you just talked about. Anand, you would like to.
Yeah, and I think Prasanna and Monica, I think summed it much. And I think the only thing that I would add here, I think the core again, I would say is the JAM. I think Jandhan, Aadhaar, and the mobile are penetration, which has really helped India. And the government obviously is the biggest driver today. Thanks to NPCI for great products like IMPS, great products like UPI. I think probably just change the way banking is done. So I think great work done by some of them really, and that's predominantly why you see all the big companies here today, right? So I think thanks to them for really changing the way banking is done.
Well, thank you so much. This discussion can go on, and we have hardly covered anything here. And all of you are, I'm sure, sitting with so much of experience as well as fresh new ideas for improving this sector, and a lot of new things that can be done. But obviously, we have completely run out of time. So once again, would like to thank all the distinguished panelists, Monica, Anand, and Prasanna, for joining us for the Telecom Leadership Forum 2021. Thank you so much once again. Thanks.
Thanks.